Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series. My name is Jennifer Gill. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Zerto, and I have with me Jean Perry, who is the Senior Solutions Engineer. And we're going to talk about Zerto Virtual Replication, a new approach to disaster recovery. So before we move on from the title slide, we'd like to point out our awards. You see we have quite a few, and of course we're very proud of that. So at VMworld this past summer, we get Best of Show and the Gold Award for Business Continuity and Data Protection. And then just recently, this past February, we got Product of the Year. We got a Gold Award from Server Virtualization. So today we are going to go over Zerto as a company. We'll talk about the impact of virtualization on BCDR. We'll look at the Zerto Virtual Replication overview. We'll give an overview of the product, look at the architecture, virtual protection groups, automation. I hand it over to Jean for a demonstration so you can see the product in action. And we'll talk about what BCDR looks like without Zerto, go through a case study, sum up, and then finally we'll take your questions. If you'd like to ask any questions, please use the chat feature that's located within the panel that's showing up on the right-hand side of our screen. So Zerto at a glance, we provide enterprise-class virtual replication and BCDR solutions for the data center and the cloud. We have a very seasoned team with industry executives from EMC RecoverPoint, HP, IBM, and Microsoft. And what those companies all have in common is they're either designing infrastructure or actual applications that require a great deal of protection for mission-critical applications. So they're able to leverage those expertise, and we bring to Zerto Virtual Replication, purpose-built for a virtualized environment and for those mission-critical applications. So if we look at what virtualization changed, so you have a lot of things that are virtualized: servers, networking, security, until you get to your replication, and then it's in the storage layer. So with Zerto, we kind of recognize that replication isn't in the right place. It's tied very tightly to the hardware. So with Zerto and Replication Hypervisor, you're able to continue to get all the benefits of virtualization with an enterprise-class BCDR and replication solution. So you don't have to give up any of those virtualization benefits. So here we have a very simple architecture, and I say simple because we have just two sites. We have a protected site and a replication site. And with Zerto, we are able to do multiple sites, but today we're just going to talk about two. So there are two components of the software. There is the Zerto Virtual Manager. You'll see that there's one per site, and as the diagram indicates, it plugs right into vCenter. So that enables you to keep your management simple and centralized. And also we can propagate alerts up to the vCenter server. So again, keeping things all in one place for you. The second component is the Zerto Virtual Replication Appliance. You can see that there's one per ESX host. And although I said appliance, it is virtualized. And the Zerto Virtual Replication Appliance is what performs the replication. They communicate Zerto Virtual Appliance on the protected site to the one at the replication site. And this is able to perform a replication regardless of LAN size and physical architecture. And you'll see that we can replicate from anything to anything. So that helps you save costs on your hardware. So you can use either a lower cost array on your replication site or maybe an older array to help you further reduce the cost of your mission-critical applications, as the infrastructure for those is usually quite expensive. And also, just to reiterate, it is an all-software solution, so it's highly scalable. Just as you add a new ESX host, you simply install another virtual replication appliance. I also want to stress that these are not agents, and we don't require guest-based agents, and everything is managed through the Zerto Virtual Manager, keeping everything simple. So as your environment grows, you don't have anything extra to manage, another point to go to. Everything is still at the Zerto Virtual Manager. So Jean, do you think you could cover the features that help enhance service levels?
Sure, Jennifer. So one of those that started talking about a little bit, I think, earlier is one thing to understand is that Zerto is an asynchronous replication solution. But one of our key differentiators and key architectural points is that we are continuously replicating the write I/O that's initiated by the protected VMs or protected application. This is very different from other solutions that may replicate data only after a certain amount of time has passed, whether that may be 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, what have you. The other key point to this is that because of this architecture and being able to continuously replicate, we're also able to offer and sustain very low enterprise level RPOs, as low as 1 second if needed. And with all this, it's very important to note as well that there is no application impact to your protected VM or to your application that you are protecting. Additionally, from a recovery perspective, one of the things that we certainly can offer and enhance your SLAs with for your application recovery is the ability to not just recover to the latest replicated point in time, but also to be able to play back basically and recover to an earlier point in time. And this is what we call our CDP history. And our CDP history can actually be configured for that SLA on a per application or per group basis, anywhere from about 1 hour upwards to about 5 days. And thirdly, we also have for your SLAs as well is built-in WAN compression as well as overall throttling that you can limit Zerto's use of your available bandwidth. But we also have several features that available to you that can optimize your bandwidth and optimize actually what is replicated and what is not very intelligently, as well as we're very resilient to WAN outages, whether they be a couple of seconds or worst case, a few days. And Jennifer, I'll turn it back over to you now to move to application protection.
Yes. So at Zerto, we realized that in addition to protecting data, you really want to protect the application, especially where a mission-critical application is concerned. So we've designed something called a virtual protection group. So you can see that with many enterprise-class applications, usually there's more than one VM involved. So for example, you might have an application server, a web server, and a database server, and those are all individual VMs. But because they are all protecting the same application, you want to group them together into a consistency group. So this is something that can help deliver write order fidelity, as an example, between your protected site and replication site to make sure that there's synchronization between those two applications. So it delivers that VM and VMDK consistency. It's really important, especially where a mission-critical application is concerned. Critical when you need to recover. We can protect across various servers and storage locations. So for example, you might have HP and Sun servers, a mix of those, and those VMs for an application might be distributed across those two types of servers. That doesn't matter. With Zerto, as long as they're in the same virtual protection group, your BCDR policies will be applied consistently. And also, because it's highly virtual aware, so with that virtual replication appliance that we talked about being on every ESX host, and with the virtual protection group, this is what helps you continue to realize the benefits of virtualization. So you can continue to use vMotion, storage vMotion, high availability features, and the VApp feature. With other BCDR solutions, because they don't have that virtual awareness, you have to turn those features off. And those are really nice features that give you some additional cost benefits and power savings and things like that. With Zerto, you can continue to use those. Gene, can you discuss the ability to recover to a consistent point in time for an application?
Sure, Jennifer. So as you started to touch on, the VPG is really central to our architecture to enable application recovery. And basically, the way the VPG works is that regardless of how many VMs comprise your application, whether they may be 2 or as many as 200. All right. Once those VMs are grouped within that virtual protection group, it's within that group that not only, as Jennifer mentioned, each and every one of those recovery points within our CDP history down to that particular second that you may recover to are write consistent across all of those VMs in that VPG, as well as the write order fidelity is maintained across all of those VMs within that VPG as well. And so additionally, besides being the consistency group functionality, the VPG is also that organizational container for your application. But it's a really key architectural point to maintain that consistency and recovery.
Great. So we've talked a lot about replication and how to ensure replication is done consistently. Zerto includes full automation of the DR process itself, not just the replication. So if we look at the virtual awareness of the product, we did talk about that. So it's aware of the virtual machines, the virtual disks, even if you have some advanced features like vMotion in place. So with Zerto, the virtual replication appliance is collecting the IOs. They'll get sent over to the replication site continuously. We do continuous block level replication. And then when you do need to recover, Zerto automates the creation of the VMs on the replication site and automatically will reconfigure any IP addresses or anything like that that needs to be done as well. And all that automation of this process does two things. The primary thing is it reduces the RTO to just a matter of minutes because it's fully automated. Secondly, it also helps reduce your risk because everything is automated. Once you've set up the process and you've tested it and ensure it works, you're going to get that process repeated consistently every single time. You can also verify that with our click to test anytime. And funny, the customers that I've been speaking to recently, this is really a hot feature for them in particular because using something, an array-based solution or something like that, to test the replication process and ensure that they will be created in the target site, especially for a mission-critical application, this usually involves taking down the mission-critical application. So testing is done at like 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday. Not the ideal time to be doing testing. With Zerto, because we're able to fail over either to a production environment or to a test environment, however you want, depending on the scenario, you can click to test your solution anytime, 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. So you can test failover to the most previous point in time or to any point in time leveraging the journal. It's really a nice feature for our customers. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gene to take us through the demo.
Great, Jennifer. So what we'll cover here a little bit quickly is that I'll show you an overall view of the site configuration that you'll see within the Zerto plugin in your vCenter client. We'll also then go ahead and perform a test failover, as Jennifer mentioned, the click-to-test functionality. And we'll show that with a couple of twists in terms of not only being able to do a completely non-disruptive DR test and recover our application, but also maybe if, as Jennifer mentioned, very popular with our customers is the test failover capability to be able to recover whether it's corrupted or accidentally deleted data. So we'll go through one of those scenarios as well. And then we'll actually talk about, and I'll show you some of the integration that we have natively with VMware, as well as while we're going through that test, showing you some of the additional capabilities that you have within your VM protection and recovery in terms of some of our advanced features like supporting RDMs, both physical and virtual, automating that IP reconfiguration for each of the vNICs on your VMs. And then finally, we'll try and quickly set up a VPG as well and initiate that, that initial protection. So let me just switch over from our PowerPoint show here to bring up a couple of my vCenter clients, and we'll switch to that site view on each of the clients. And one of the things that I want to point out on our site view is that from an overall perspective, we can see here that what we're looking at is that between each site, in my case, Las Vegas and New York, I have one application that's being protected, that's running in Las Vegas and replicating and being recovered and protected over to New York. And in the opposite, I have 4 applications being protected in New York and replicated back over to Las Vegas. Okay, this interface is through our plugin within the vClient, as you can see here, which is really your interface into our Zerto Virtual Manager that Jennifer talked about in terms of one of our components. In terms of our integration with vCenter, you can see here in this real-time message pane within our site view, you can see that from time to time we'll display here informational, error, and warning type messages. These will also roll up into our reports button here, but we'll also have complete integration with vCenter alerts and alarms so that you can continue to notify and alert right out of vCenter as you do today for the rest of your vSphere virtualized environment. Additionally, what you'll also see is that every one of Zerto's tasks, whether it is user-initiated or part of our automation or orchestration of recovery or failback, we will record and send all of those tasks up to vCenter's tasks and events so that you'll also have a complete security and audit log of all of those operations. One other thing I want to point out as well is that if I switch over to my New York vClient, a couple of the applications here at the top of my tree that you'll see that I am currently protecting. One is my SharePoint environment, and the other that I'm using and is configured as a VMware vApp is a WordPress application that you can see here listed as a web app. Now, one thing I want to point out is that with Zerto, and I'm just going to resize my Las Vegas vClient window, as soon as I can bring that over here. So as I work on getting my Las Vegas vClient back up, let me switch to the one thing I wanted to point out actually is that I can show you from this view here in terms of my VM list. We can see that from a source perspective where my VMs are actually running, whether it's Las Vegas or New York, and where they are being replicated to. The important thing that I wanted to point out here that you'll see with Zerto is that if we look here for this last VM, this TV3 that's running in Las Vegas and being protected over to New York, if we look in our tree in New York, there's nothing for you to manage in your DR site from a Zerto perspective. We automate and manage all of that for you. We're not presenting any type of ghosted or shadow VMs. If I switch over to one of my protected VMs that we're currently protecting, I mentioned that this web app is that WordPress blog application. We'll also switch views from our Zerto site view to our application or VPP view that you see here on the screen in front of you. And in this VPP view, we'll see a couple of things like the current state and status of our protection. In this case, protecting means that we're fully consistent and synchronized. And also we'll see a summary of our SLA policy for this VPG. Things like we mentioned, like our CDP history. And then finally, we'll also see our, a list of our VMs that are being protected within this group. If I click on Edit VPG, I can see here in this shaded gray box is where my core SLA settings are that I can configure on for this application or for this group. And these can be different from all of my other groups. Additionally, in terms of how I quickly and easily specify identify where I want to replicate to and recover to in terms of my resources in my DR site, this is where once I select my target site, I can then select my recovery cluster or specific host from an ESX or vSphere perspective. And then once I've selected that cluster or host, I'll have my other resources available to me that I can select in terms of my recovery data store as well as my networks that that cluster or host has access to. And these settings can be applied to all of the VMs within this VPG or that comprise this application, again, whether there's 2 or 200. Now, if I need additional flexibility in terms of where I recover some of these VMs in my DR site, then I can drill down to in a deeper level in terms of by selecting the particular VM that I want to configure, and if I click on my configure button, I can then change or select those settings for my recovery of this particular VM here for my recovery cluster as well as data store. And then additionally, I can also drill down and select on a per volume basis and set the particular recovery data store, if I choose to, at a volume level. Additionally, I mentioned earlier that, that we support both physical and virtual RDMs, right? And you have the flexibility to recover those physical or virtual RDMs to either a physical or virtual RDM on the recovery side. And then an additional very popular feature here is our pre-seed capability. And the pre-seed capability is what allows you really to negate or mitigate a lot of time as well as bandwidth that may be needed for the initial synchronization. So rather than if this volume was maybe 1 terabyte in size, rather than having to do a full synchronization of this 1 terabyte volume across my network and wait that amount of time for that to synchronize, by using the pre-seed option, however I can get a copy of this VMDK file over to my DR site, whether that maybe be on a thumb or a portable drive, or maybe even recovered from a backup that's in my DR site. Once I have that file, I can then upload it to my recovery data store in my DR site. And then here I would just come in and select that recovery data store where I uploaded it to, and then either browse or type in the exact path to that VMDK. And at that point, once we start our synchronization of this, we'll only synchronize the incremental changes between that pre-seeded copy as well as production. Okay. The other thing and feature that we definitely want to talk about is our automatic re-IPing. And by selecting the NIC that's configured within this VM, or if there were multiple NICs, I could select each one. And we can click on Configure. The architecture here and configuration options really allow us to support any network topology that you may have or require between your production and DR sites. Because we segregate the settings that can be re-IP'd according to the operation that you may be applying to this application or specific VM. So in the case of initiating a failover operation, whether it's a planned or unplanned failover, this configuration would apply to either of those operations. Now we could simply leave this simple as just selecting the network that we want to attach this NIC to when we recover, or we could select and configure a complete DHCP configuration with our DNS settings, or a full static configuration for this NIC, again, along with our DNS settings as well. Additionally to that, and completely separate from that, is that for our test failover and for our test operation, we can have a completely different network that we attach to, whether in my case it's an isolated vSwitch, or we can also have a complete re-IP configuration apply that may be different than what we applied on our failover tab. And again, this could be DHCP or static. Okay, so a lot of flexibility as well as simplicity within the re-IPing feature of Zerto. Once I cancel out of all of this, then I could simply, if I've updated any of my settings, once I select Save, and this can be done on the fly as you see me doing here, we'll have a quick update of the changes. for a couple of seconds here. And once we're back into a protecting state, I'm going to go ahead and initiate a test failover. Before we do that, one of the things I would like to do is go ahead and I'm already logged in here to my web server, and I have my browser up for this WordPress blog that I mentioned that I have running on this web app V app. If I scroll down to the second posting here, which is titled Webinar Postings, and I expand my comments, we see a comment listed here that actually I created just before this webinar was beginning. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and log in here, and we'll delete that comment, and then we will initiate a test failover using our CDP history. We'll be able to recover that comment that we just deleted. All right. So let me scroll down here to our webinar post that I created at 10:59 this morning. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And now if I go back to my home page, we should see under that webinar postings that we have no comments listed. With that, I'm going to also go ahead and just minimize that screen, and note that it is call it 11:33 that we deleted that. So I should be able to select the CDP point in time on this test recovery between those two time points of 10:59 and 11:33 and be able to recover that comment. So here, back on my application view screen for my web app, I have my test failover option selected. When I click on my big blue arrow, this begins our test failover wizard. And here's where I can select under my checkpoint column my CDP history. You'll also see where we can integrate on my database server. I'm running and utilizing Microsoft's VSS checkpoints, and I can integrate those into my checkpoint CDP history here. Or I can also select the full timeline of our checkpoints, and you'll see the very granular nature of each of these checkpoints. And this is where I mentioned earlier that each and every one of these checkpoints at this particular time, down to the second, will be write consistent as well as have write order fidelity across all of these VMs. So I mentioned that I selected or created that comment at about 10:59. I'm just going to go ahead and select this 11:01 and 30-second point in time, and we should be able to recover that posting that I just deleted. And let's go ahead and bring up my, looks like I may have logged out of earlier, my Las Vegas V client, but we should be able to bring that up very quickly here. All right, and so we see here our Las Vegas client. We also see in the tree, all right, where we are now creating, because I mentioned to you that we don't present any ghosted or shadow VMs, as well as we're showing you all the tasks real time here in our recent task pane, as well as forwarding these up into our vCenter tasks and events. Okay, and we also, as I mentioned, this is this web app is a VMware V app. We acknowledge the and carry over on recovery the start order of the VMware V app capability or feature. And so I have a 30-second delay between my web server and database server being powered on. So that's some of the few seconds of delay that you are seeing here. And once these start powered on and start booting up, we can go ahead and watch them be booted up, and we'll log in to our web server, and we should be able to recover that deleted comment. Okay. While we're waiting for this to power on and boot up, one of the things I'll also point out is if I switch over to my host and select my networking tab, if you remember when we went under our network settings for that NIC for our VMs, we saw that I set my test network to my isolated vSwitch, which is where we can see those machines being recovered here. Okay, and I'll just switch back to my web server, and we'll be watching this as it is powered on. Okay, there been any questions yet, Jennifer, that we may be able to cover while we're?
Oh, sure.
Or maybe we should cover while we're waiting this few seconds here.
Yeah, we get a couple of questions. So here's one. Does the Zerto Virtual Appliance operate in memory for the write split, or does it read data changes from storage?
That's a good question. So we actually are pretty much, once we get past our initial synchronization, we are reading the protected VM's write IO right out of ESX server memory. So we're very much not reading from disk unless it's that initial synchronization. So that's a good question. And while this completes the boot up here, we'll go ahead and log in. And then once we're logged in here, I'm just going to minimize my task pane and just a little bit of screen space here. And we'll bring up our home page. And if we scroll down, we should see that under our webinar postings that we have that one comment that I added earlier at 10:59 that simply has the webinar post. Okay, so we can see that. We'll just quickly switch back before we end our test to our production environment, and we'll just refresh our page here and log out. And we will see that here in production we have no postings under our webinar posts. Now, when I want to end this test, I can end it from either site, but since I'm already here in this vClient, I'll simply switch back to my application view. And you'll see that we've added this little status box here for our test in progress. If I click on this blue circle on that status box, we do need to set a pass or failed result for our test. And this could certainly be used for, and we can report on later, as well as with the notes that you may need to fill in here if this was some type of audited DR test. And once we stop that test, and I'll switch over quickly here to our Las Vegas site, you'll see that we'll now start cleaning up the test environment that we just created. And you'll really see these VMs just powered down right in front of us here. And again, we'll be logging all of these tasks into vCenter's tasks and events. Right? And as soon as this is finished cleaning up, we will switch back over to our PowerPoint, and we'll just do a quick review. So we'll see that the entire environment will get cleaned up, and it will be returned to the way it was prior to the test being initiated. So we'll remove all of those testing recovery elements from the tree. Once that's complete, we can again take a look at New York. We'll see our application view updated here in a minute or so, or in a few seconds or so, in terms of that cleanup. And again, we'll see here that our application is, again, still up and running, and as well as, since I didn't actually recover and reinsert that comment back into production, I still have no comment. So let's switch back to our slideshow, and we can review in terms of what we covered. So we actually did run through a full test failover event. And we're able to recover the previously created and then deleted comment or database record within that application. I also showed you and pointed out where we have centralized management and integration within vCenter from both alerting and tasks, as well as ease of management from a pure plugin perspective. And we also took a look at both from a high level and certainly in some detail as well, all of the capabilities and settings that you can set from both an SLA as well as for re-IPing, all within the virtual protection group, and being able to consistently recover that application across multiple VMs. We also talked a little bit about, and I showed you the feature for pre-seeding, and we certainly talked about our IP reconfiguration, simple setup and configuration for that. And one thing to reiterate there is that there's no guest software that's required from a Zerto perspective. And then finally, we also showed in terms of using the CDP history, recovering to a prior point in time, which really enabled us to recover that that deleted comment from our WordPress blog. And so, Jennifer, with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure, that sounds good. So if we look at the array-based replication process kind of before Zerto, so here you can see there are many, many steps because there's a lot of coordination between the virtualization team and the storage team. If you have an appliance in the environment, that's one more coordination point. And I'm not going to read all these, but basically you see a very complex process. So it's complex, it's very manual, which is exactly the opposite of what you were hoping to gain from virtualization, and it's inflexible. So with Zerto Virtual Replication, we're able to eliminate many, many of those steps because everything's in the hypervisor. It's a very flexible process. So we took all those very manual steps and consolidated it down to just a couple of steps, just to locate space within the storage, ensure there's space for the VMs that are replicated. Then the virtualization team locates all the VMs for an application, configures the VPG and the policies that need to be applied to that, and then you hit go, basically. And then ongoing replication is occurring. Very, very simple. So if we look at some of the benefits that one of our customers has seen, Woodforest National Bank, and if you were to go to our website, you would see a case study there. So they had a really unique situation in that they are located in an area that gets hit by hurricanes quite often. So rather than waiting for a hurricane to disrupt their environment, they proactively failed over their environment prior to hurricane season between Austin and Dallas. And then when hurricane season was over, they failed back from Dallas. Houston. And then they failed over back to Houston. And they were using an array-based solution. And that required a lot of coordination. It was basically a weekend of prepping the environment, doing the failover, and it was quite intensive. With Zerto, they were able to automate the process. As you saw, it doesn't just replicate the data, but also fully automate the BCDR process. It includes orchestration features as well. And they were able to see a number of savings. So within their environment, they were able to reduce the number of LUNs. And that led to a reduced storage footprint of 25%. So if you look at an array-based solution, if you have a 100 gigabyte LUN size throughout your environment, you have to have that not just on your production site, but also your replication site. Even if only 10 gigabytes of that 100 gigabyte LUN are being used, you still have to replicate the entire 100 gigabytes. With Zerto, we're granular. We replicate at the actual VM, so they're able to really reduce their storage requirements. And because they were replicating in just the VM, they saw a reduction in their bandwidth requirements as well due to less data going over the wire. You can see there they were able to reduce that by 44%. And again, I already mentioned the storage. And so the net of the situation was they were really able to reduce the operational complexity. They're protecting VMs with a couple of clicks. And you saw in the demo that you can set up a VPG quite easily, and it's protected. And then the orchestration automation of the process. And it also installs the current environment. This is something that we haven't touched upon yet. No configuration changes are required within your environment with Zerto. It integrates seamlessly into your existing infrastructure. So in February, we announced the Cloud vCDR platform. So this enables a couple of different kinds of replication within a cloud. So we've talked about the private cloud. So that's typically an enterprise. Everything's under their control. They have 2 enterprise-sized data centers, and they replicate between them. Maybe one is a dedicated production site, one's a dedicated replication site, or they might do it back and forth between. Many enterprises are kind of interested in looking at the cloud, and DR as a service is a great way to do that. And with Zerto, because we are hardware agnostic, this opened up a great opportunity for enterprises and cloud providers. The enterprise has an opportunity to get comfortable with the cloud, and the cloud provider now is able to offer valuable service to the enterprise. Then if we look at in-cloud VCDR, so there may be some applications that are just problematic for your organization or for you that you might like to just move off-site altogether. And that's what we call in-cloud VCDR. So you can move the production and the replication all to a cloud provider, and then they can do replication between their two data centers. So it's for the public, private, and hybrid cloud. So we do have a couple of questions here. And the first one, someone was wondering, do we support other hypervisors besides VMware? So at this time, you did see the presentation is very VMware focused, because right now we do support just VMware. We are looking at supporting additional hypervisors like Hyper-V, Red Hat, and Citrix, and you'll see those in the future. So then we had a question, is vCenter 5 Update 1 supported?
So the short answer to that is absolutely, and we actually began supporting Update 1 about 4 to 5 business days after it was actually released. So yes is the simple answer to that, Jennifer.
Okay, great. And there were a couple of questions around the bandwidth. So are there any statistics on bandwidth utilization between sites, or what would be the best way to estimate the amount of bandwidth used or required?
So that's a great question. We actually we have a sizing tool that we can work with you on that that very easily will point you to what data we would like to see collected right out of vCenter. So the collection is very easy and straightforward and very simple. And then we plug that number into our tools, and that will help you size your bandwidth needs, as well as you'll certainly see within Zerto the utilization and throughput of your WAN link that is currently being utilized. Okay,
great. And then there was a question: do we have any storage overhead at the DR site associated with the click-to-test anytime?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there is some additional storage that would be needed, and really part of this is more to automate the flexibility of management, but it's really driven by the amount of CDP history that you decide to choose, as well as in conjunction with the change rate or the write rate of the application that you're protecting. So yes, there is some additional storage overhead that may be used. One thing I'll point out here that we actually find in most customer environments is that most customers that implement Zerto are certainly stopping their implementation or really ramping down their use of snapshotting with our click-to-test functionality. So there's typically that beneficial trade-off.
Okay, great. There was a question, do we support VMware vCloud Director? And we actually announced in February Zerto Virtual Replication 2.0, and that includes full integration into VMware vCloud Director to be able to manage and execute VCDR processes for seamless recovery of the virtual data centers within vCloud, and that version is to be available in Q2.
Okay. And
so then there's a question, are there any mechanisms to enforce consistency at the exact same time on different guests in a VPG? Or will there be a delay of a few minutes?
Oh, so that's a great question, and we definitely want to make sure that that is really the default behavior of the VPG, is that all of the VMs on different guests, we don't distinguish between whether it's a Windows guest or a Linux guest. All of the VMs in that VPG will be consistent, both in terms of write consistent and have write order fidelity at every one of those points in time where you saw in my CDP history down to the second. So there will certainly be no difference or delay of a few minutes between the guests within the, or between the protected VMs within the VPG.
Okay, and then we have a question about failing over to the secondary site. So once you fail over, how does Zerto replicate back to the primary site? Does it need a full sync?
That's another fantastic question, and one that unfortunately, just due to the timing, we don't get to cover and show within the webinar. But we actually, so first of all, if we take a step back for a second in terms of failing back, we actually automate the fail back process. And so literally your failover or your fail back will be the exact same process as your failover. It's the exact same button that you choose when at that point comes when you want to fail back. And then finally to the bandwidth question, absolutely not. Does it need a full sync? We will absolutely do an incremental sync back to the original VMs and their data sets.
And then there's a question in the reduction in replicated data, because we did talk about that feature, how replicating just the VMs reduces the amount of data, the storage requirements. Do we get this reduction even with thickly provisioned VMDKs?
Yeah, so I think there's two kind of answers to this question. One is, I think I'll answer it, I think the question is in regards to our case study with Wood Forest. Yeah. And absolutely, you'll see those benefits regardless of whether the VMDKs are thickly or thinly provisioned. And really, the reason for that is because of the difference between or moving away from having to configure your infrastructure from a physical perspective, and not how you need it for your virtualized environment. So in other words, one of the big differences there is that typically, in Wood Forest's case, where you're utilizing array-based type replication, you're going to be replicating the physical LUN, which means that also you're going to be making sure that you size that LUN appropriately, and that also you only have VMDKs or VMs use that LUN that need to be replicated. All of those issues are no longer the case with hypervisor-based Zerto replication, because it doesn't matter to us whether you have one VMDK on a data store that needs to be replicated and the other 50 on that data store don't need to be replicated. We're only going to replicate the components of the VM. Now, the other interesting piece to this is that one of those bandwidth optimization features that I mentioned that we didn't really get to cover in the webinar or the demo as well, is that we actually offer you very simply the capability on a per VMDK basis that in the case where you're using thickly provisioned VMDKs in production, we can actually replicate those thinly so that you can take advantage of some bandwidth and storage optimization in your DR site. Or even for migration purposes, actually you could replicate the opposite. So you could have thinly provisioned VMDKs and you could have Zerto replicate them thickly.
Okay, so here's another question. How do you ensure right ordering if there's a WAN outage for an extended duration? Are changes cached on the VRA?
So that's a good question. So they are the metadata about those IOs that are being initiated are what are cached, if you will, or utilized from the VRA's vMemory perspective. And basically, that's all automated as well. In that, once we hit the limit of the VRA's virtual memory, that we drop out of what we call bitmap mode, and let's say your WAN outage in the worst case goes on for 3 days or 5 days. When that outage is eliminated and we have WAN connectivity back, then Zerto is going to do a pretty quick and efficient resynchronization of the VMs within that VPG, or all of the VPGs, to get them once again in a protected, consistent state, and then at that point will be protected, and you'll be able to initiate any type of failover operation.
Great. And then there are a couple questions around, does this take the place of VMware SRM, or would it work in conjunction with? As you saw in the demo, all the orchestration is really done within Zerto Virtual Replication. It's not just a replication solution, but it also automates the process. So this would actually, replace SRM.
That's correct, Jennifer. Yep.
Okay. There was a question around what target storage optimizations do you have to reduce the requirements for CDP journals? And I think this might be our last question, just to be respectful of everyone's time. So we will follow up with everyone individually on those other questions, and I'll just read it one more time for the audience. What target storage optimizations do you have to reduce the requirements for CDP journals?
So that's a fantastic question, and because we're very different here architecturally than any other solution available, in that one of the things that we can do is make the most of the resources that are presented to us and that we're protecting to and recovering to. So basically, we are dynamically on a very granular basis in the sub 10-second range, always reevaluating what we need for that CDP history for that particular VPG according to the SLA policy that's been set. And if we need less, then we actually will give up that storage that's being utilized. And if we need more, then we may take small pieces more from the resources that have been given to us. But it's a very dynamic and automated process, and it's optimized very efficiently.
Great. A lot of good questions. Thank you all for staying on right to the end to hear all the answers. Like I said, we didn't have time to get to all of them, but we will follow up with you and answer those on a one-off basis. We do have these webinars every 2 to 3 weeks, so certainly check out our website for more information. Thank you.